Welcome back. In this module, we'll talk about a rain dripping effect with the help of N particles. So we'll understand the principles of simulating a rain dripping as well as the droplet effects. And throughout the module, we'll continue to use the expressions as well as the functions to calibrate the workflow of N particles. And finally, at the end, we'll use Mendeley for the rendering of our entire module. All right, so let's get started. Alright, so now let's take a look inside the render image that we have got. Let me play the render sequences. So here is a very nice interesting water dripping effect we have, and we have achieved this effect with the help of N particles. So right now you can see some of the particles are sticking to the surface, while some of them are sliding, having a nice variations, a kind of an interesting organic fickle inside them. So all this, we have created with the help of N particles using goals and expressions. Now let me take you to the, raw play blast of this so that it will be much easier for you to visualize. And in this case, we have the N particles converted to the polygons, and we have some very nice and interesting behavior of N particle that clearly indicates, yes, there is a kind of a flow of a liquid or a kind of a drop which is moving or sliding throughout the surface. Let me show you another play blast what I've got. Here I have added some more interesting variations. So if you notice carefully, some of the particles are moving slow, whereas some of the particles are moving a little bit more fast. So this is very interesting, to break the symmetry, because if we add some subtlety, then it will make our effect really very interesting and much more, you can say, organic. All right, so now let me just close this and take you inside the Maya, and let's get started with this effect. So in this effect particularly, the most important thing is the goal and expressions. And obviously with the help of N particles we have utilized the goals and expressions. So let's take a moment to describe what exactly is the goal. Well, a goal is simply a kind of an attractor that attracts the particle towards itself. So let's say if we have a polygon piece of a geometry and we assign this as a goal for the particles. So particle will simply reposition itself and try to stick to the vertices of that mesh with the very default values of the goal. But we have the provision to make them stick to the overall surface of the polygon. But in that case, the particle actually reads the UV values of that polygon geometry. So if we really want to utilize the goal, one is required to have a neat and nice clean UVs. All right. So let's do one thing. Let's create a very simple plane, and let me just scale this up and give some rotations. Not a problem. Now just scale this and set this a kind of a window, and this is very nice. Not a problem. Now let's also add some further subdivisions and make sure that if we end up with the equal number of squares, that will be much better, because we want to add some deformer so that we can twist it. So instead of having a plain window, I just want to have some curve inside this. So let's go inside the modeling menu and we can have a deform. Let's say we apply a bend and simply just rotate this. Now we can use a curve. Let me just also rotate this along the y-axis. Let's say we have 90 degrees, and let's use the curvature to maybe minus 35, and that's pretty much nice. No problem. And I think so value of 35, or maybe let's say minus 45 should be fine. Yes, no problem. Now just delete the history, freeze transform, done, and just name this as a window. Alright, now let's do one thing. Let's set the camera angle, pretty much nice, and let's allow the particles to emit from the surface. Alright, and then we use the goal, and this window will be our goal. So let's go inside the FX menu. Over here we have in particles, use this option emit from the object, and obviously we have to take the emitter type as a surface with no speed at all, and no speed, no normal, no tangent speed. Hit the option create. Now once I play the timeline, you can notice that yes, particles will fall due to the gravity. So let's select the N particle 1 and just move inside here, inside the dynamic properties and just disable the gravity, not a problem. Now, I just want to show you some very important things. There are reason, why we are using the goal. Well, the very first and basic reason is that, what if your mesh is animated and you want to add some more deformers, but you also want particles to flow on the surface of an animated mesh. Well, if you try to do in the default state, then you'll notice that the moment your mesh move, the particle will never follow them. All right, let's do one thing. Let's select this, or let's first change the rendering, the shading section of this, and put it to the sphere so that it would be much easier for us to visualize. Now let's simply select the geometry and use this interactive playback, which I have dropped over here. So by going over here, you can simply press Ctrl Shift and you'll have a shortcut over here. So if you just play this and if you move your plane, you notice that yes, something wrong is happening, because the moment you drag this plane, the particles just remain over there. What if you just want the particles to follow this? So that's the reason why we want to use the goal. Well, that's not the only reason. That's one of the reasons why we want to use the goal. All right. So let me take it back, reposition this. So the second step is to select the particles and select the geometry, move inside the end particles, use a goal. All right. Now go to the option box, make sure that we have a reset setting, use the full value goal weight and hit the option create. Now the moment you play the timeline, as I've already told you, the default state of the goal will simply reposition the particle based upon the vertices of this mesh. And most importantly, guys, the important thing is the UVs. If we don't have UVs, then goal will simply going to ignore the particles. Let's just do one thing. Let's first of all play and notice and take a look at that, how the particles are now actually behaving. So they will simply reposition themselves based upon the vertices of this mesh. All right. Now what if I just have UVs, but the layout is very bad, or a poorly layout UVs? So if I just position this over here, so I think it is just covering the, alright, let me just scale it down a bit more. That's fine. So it's covering the area from the U side, that is 0 to the zero point 0.1, and from the V side it's maximum 0.125. Let's just close this and let's play the timeline once again. Alright, so now if I play the timeline, you'll notice as such nothing is happening. This is just because we still haven't assigned the UV values. And there is one nice thing. If we go to the emitter, particle emitter, and we have an interesting option that says need parent UV. The moment you click this, it simply means that now your particle will have the values of the UV. So whatsoever is the value of the UV, your particle can able to carry the same value. Alright, and the moment you enable this, if you go inside the particle shape node, basically the per particle, and just go to the general, and you can have something called as the parent U and V, which is over here. So we have parent U and parent V, which is the per particle values for the particles, and along with this we can also pick the goal U and goal V. Hit the option OK. Alright, now if I go inside the goal U, let's say in the creation expressions, I'm using the creation mode. Now over here what I have, let's say this value, which is n particle shape 1 dot goal U, equals to the parent U. So we have parent U, simply copy this, and let's say we duplicate this. Instead of parent U we have parent V, and instead of the goal U we can have a goal V. Now hit the option create. Now this will give you some more benefits, but as you know, we have the poorly layout UVs, so you'll notice that most of the particles will just appear on this section. Now if I play the timeline, you'll notice we have something like this. Although you can acknowledge one more thing, and that is the particles, instead of repositioning themselves on the vertices, are actually acting upon the whole mesh. They are simply sticking to the entire mesh instead of sticking particularly on the vertices. But still, due to the bad layout of the UVs, we just simply cannot distribute the particles on the entire surface of this mesh. So for that, the very important thing is to select the mesh, go inside the UV, and simply select all the UVs, and you can go inside the layout. So with that, if you have a nice, neat and clean 0 to 1 layout, and now if you play the timeline, you can see everything is now settled. And this is not, guys, the default state of the particles, because if you just select this and go for the interactive play, try to play this, you can simply see that particles are now sticking to your object, and wherever you go, whatsoever you do, your particles will remain gold or attracted towards this surface. That's the beauty of the gold. All right, now let me just reposition this, and now let's do one thing. Let me take a pause over here. I hope so you must have understood the concept of the goal. The responsibility of the goal is simply to make the particle attract or stick. I should say it's a goal, but you can consider this a kind of a glue. So particle will simply stick to the surface. Now the choice is yours whether you want particles to stick based upon the vertices of the mesh or to the overall entire surface of the mesh. Alright, and in the next clip I'll talk about the movement of the particles with respect to the goal. Alright, so let's get started with the next clip.